Welcome to the Wellness in Asheville podcast, where we shine a light on the people, practices, and places that make this city one of the most inspiring wellness communities in the country. I'm your host, Travis Richardson, founder of Be Well Asheville, your local news source for health, wellness, and community events. All right. So today we step into the heart of Asheville's consciousness movement at Wellspring Wellness Center. Founded in 2016 by Haydn and Terry Hasty and built upon their MindSpring consulting legacy that began all the way back in 1994. Wellspring is a sanctuary for seekers and healers of all kinds, offering acupuncture, massage, yoga, reiki, and of course, tons more. Haydn and Terry are also the soulful creators of Truth Spring, launched in 2020 to nurture inner truth and creative transformative gatherings. This September, they'll host the Truth Spring Conference, a multi-day immersion designed for both seasoned spiritual explorers and those just beginning their journey. From our first ramen-fueled conversations at Ito's to co-hosting my Wellness in Asheville networking event, their warmth, wisdom, and genuine connection have made them cherished friends. And by the way, I just have to say, what I love about Haydn and Terry is when I first met them, it felt like I've known these guys forever. And I feel like that's pretty much anybody who meets them would say that. It's not very often that you meet people that have their own spiritual journey and their own spiritual growth as their top priority, and then who embody that just in their ways of being. And so I've really come to appreciate both of them. I consider them both friends. I know that they consider me their friend. And I even have a decent amount in common with Haydn. So really excited to bring them on. Let's dive in with the mindful, heart-centered duo from Wellspring Wellness Center, Haydn and Terry Hasty. Welcome, Haydn and Terry, to the Wellness in Asheville podcast. Excited to talk about all things consciousness and more today. How are you guys both doing today?
Oh, great.
Great. How are you?
Thanks so much. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's been great. You know, we had our little lunch meeting last week and had some great ramen and some great discussion. And it became really clear to me after talking to you both that your real passion is all around consciousness. So in doing my research and how I was going to construct today's talk, I thought, man, let's really get in more into an extension of that conversation we had.
Yeah, it picks up kind of on the tail end of all of our work where, back in the day, 15, 20 years ago, we were not aware of this element of consciousness. So when we approached wellness, it came in through the traditional framework of what I call the triangle or mind, body, emotion. But that began to shift and change completely about 15 years ago, 14 years ago.
And moving really from a linear way of looking at wellness, like we often think of, well, we're babies, then we're children, then we're young adults, then we're middle-aged adults, then we're old adults, and we die. And we look at this linear way, which feels kind of stagnant and inevitable. But when you add consciousness, which is more it is cyclical. It's more natural, like seasons. We even have a part of our work called Seasons of the Soul, where we look at creation. There's a beginning to everything, there's a preservation of everything. It lasts for a period of time, including our life. And there's a destruction, or another way to look at that is dissolution. But what always follows destruction is creation again. And we've all had those times in our life. It's not a one and done. And that's where consciousness comes in, is how can I use not only my experiences, which we've become pretty good at doing, but my understanding of the higher truth of how things really work and why things are how they are, to guide my life in a much more powerful and
Well, see, that's really that's the essence of the problem, even in terms of death, in terms of life and death, of wellness and illness. The problem is it's focused on, as you just said, experience. But what about existence? I mean, until the issue of existence is addressed, at least from my point of view, it's impossible to accurately describe and discuss the experiences. But that's what most of our wellness concepts are based on.
What do you mean between the two of those, experience and existence?
Which one of those two comes first?
Existence.
Exactly.
So you're actually not confused.
I'm glad someone thinks that.
So once you get that straight, then experiences can only be really understood if you get the existence piece down. So now, if I gave you a loaded question and said, "All right, now tell me about your existence," notice what happens when you ask someone that question. If you ask someone that question, what would their response be?
Like,
Mm,
tell me about your existence. Yeah.
Yes.
mm. Well, if it hits me in a way where I go much deeper into myself, because experience, I guess, in my understanding of it, is really about external things that seem to happen to me. My experience, when you ask somebody, what is your experience of something? They say, well, I felt this way because of that. But where we talk about existence, it really harkens to the thing that is aware of, before it's one level deeper. It's the thing that's aware of the experience that can become aware of these things happening, something
And
like that.
and yes, well, I think it's more than something like that. It's very close to it because consciousness, really, to a very large extent, dictates the experience. The outer world,
Or unconsciousness
or
dictates the
right,
experience.
could say
Yeah.
the unconsciousness. If we go back and make sure that we connect, for example, the issue of wellness. Now, again, we didn't start off at this point when we first started the business in 1995. We were not aware of this, but wellness is not a byproduct of the body. Wellness is a byproduct of the mind. As your mind is, so will your future be. As the level of consciousness is, so does it dictate the outer experiences. And and the kind of experiences that the individual draws to themselves, because it's fairly magnetic in that way. Um, and looking at it, and I loved what you said about having to go deeper, and it's going to be about you. It's not going to be about anything happening on the outside. As you go deeper into the center, or you could say into, as far as one could go inside of oneself to speak to that, what you find is that the outer is just a manifestation of the inner. So what we're really experiencing, where the mind thinks that what we're experiencing in the physical body is something going on out here in the outer world, it's actually not. What it is experiencing is what's going on in the inner world. And the
Mm,
outer is really just a physical manifestation of the inner. And that is also true of the body. The body is just a physical manifestation of that inner. Did I
Hmm.
did that make sense, Travis? Did you
it,
understand what I said?
I think so. I think the way I understand that is that I think there's a saying, what's within is without, and what's without is within, and it basically allows you to look at things as more of like a fractal or a reflection of something else. So when I look out into the world and I see a world that maybe I don't like, or I'm uncomfortable with, or that I want to change, then it's possible that there's something in me that I should be looking at.
Is the world is an outcome of us as individuals. The world in and of itself is not real, except that it's us as a collective.
Well, listen,
Each of us individually.
I want to be careful here. The world is real, but what you think about the world is not.
Yeah, but
That's your stuff.
it's just
My
like
stuff.
a team is a team, yes, but it's made up of individuals. A family is a family, but it's made up of the
So
individuals. And the same if we expand it out. So if we can look out there, Travis, and say there are things I don't like, but I have no idea how to affect them or change them in the world. But in here, inside of me, I can make that change and in that way influence and affect the collective.
let me ask you something. So if I'm a listener and I'm hearing you guys you say this, and I'm dealing with some real challenging stuff. Maybe I've got somebody who's very sick, and I don't personally have, but somebody maybe, and they're not doing very well, and I'm not sure how long they might make it, or what's going to be the outcome of what's going on with the person I
Okay.
love. How do you help somebody see that in a positive way?
Um, I, I I think it's really important, and I'm speaking in terms of consciousness, and I want to go back to a key and central, vital word that you use, which is learning to see beyond the physical, to see beyond the experience, to understand at a far deeper level what is taking place. Now, with that in mind, of this need to learn to be able to see, which is what consciousness is about, it's important to understand that we all live in two different worlds simultaneously. We live in the physical, what I sometimes refer to as the physical horizontal. It's measurable. It's emotional. It's full of sensations, and it's very, very linear. The other world in which we live is non-physical. It is a spiritual dimension. We are all spiritual beings in a physical body, but we're not in touch with that world for the most part. Now, we believe that's what's taking place today, but
That
and
people are getting more in touch with
yes,
and waking up to
right.
this other part of ourselves.
But both those worlds exist simultaneously. So, in terms of dealing with a hardship like that, and everybody has experienced crippling loss in some way, whether it was the loss of a loved one, the loss of financial security, the loss of a job, the loss of a relationship. We're all driven towards that inner place inside where it's the only place that we can go to try to find any relief. So if all we know is horizontal physical, we're not going to do very well with those difficult circumstances. We will go through the grinding and the just the constant bombardment of the everyday pressure that it exerts on us, that is constantly forcing us to the inner, to the inside. And until we gain, so you'll notice what I'm avoiding trying to give you an exact answer. I would love to talk about that, but I also want to be real sensitive to a question like that because it's really difficult to deal with. However, consciousness allows you to see something else besides what is taking place physically, and that is where uh, that is the source of peace. That consciousness is the source of harmony and acceptance and true understanding because every other individual is operating at their soul level and we're not in charge of that. And sometimes, the soul decides to leave.
Okay, so well, I guess in your definition, then what is consciousness?
All right, let's put it in a somewhat of a paradigm that anybody could look at. We could You can see it as a three-step process of what consciousness is and its relationship to our life. So let's start off with a definition. But we've got to get away from the esoteric and the universal. We've got to get it down to the individual level. Otherwise, there would be no point in ever discussing it. Consciousness is the truth of who and what you really are that's working its way out through your ignorance. Ignorance of that truth of who and what you really are. Your existence, you
Mhm.
could say, to connect that back to what we were
And
talking
just
about.
as a quick aside, not to interrupt your trilogy,
No,
so
no,
don't
that's
lose
fine.
that.
That's all right.
Um, we'll ask people, and I've been brought up certainly in this mentality that I am the spark of the divine within. And if I ask someone who's struggling with any of the things that we struggle with as human beings, I will ask, do you believe or do you think you are the spark of the divine? Are you made in the image of the divine? And invariably the person says yes. Even an atheist, she told me I'm an atheist, but I do believe that I am made of all that is.
Mm.
So it was an interesting conversation. But as soon as they say, or a human being says, I do believe I'm made in the image of the divine, almost always the next sentence is, but I'm so flawed in so many ways, but I'm so screwed up, or I don't know how to deal with. If we really are, if we really do experience ourselves at the level of existence as being that of the divine, whatever the person's definition of that is, why would we feel so much anxiety and self doubt and um, angst about things? And so there's kind of the disconnect of living in two worlds, that we do know that there's a higher part, but we tend to ascribe to the other.
Well, we can come back to the trilogy, which is important. It helps frame the conversation up. But let's go back to something you said. I don't care what it is. I mean, I realize this is my perception, it's my opinion, doesn't really mean anything, but I've never seen anything not fit what I'm getting ready to say. And what I'm saying is that I don't care what the upset is. If you go down that rabbit hole, you will find that the source of all upset is your own negative ground of being. I I don't care what the situation is. If you become afraid, if you become enraged, the source of it is that negative ground of being inside.
The
It's
trigger might be something outside, but the source of it is in here. Yeah.
and that
Mm.
is the ignorance. That it's the disconnect. That's the unconsciousness that's playing out inside of each one of us.
Yeah, I like that. And I was just thinking, what came to my mind was, could there be an upset if I knew I was part of everything? If I knew I was literally not the small self that I am, the little wave in the ocean, if I knew I was the ocean, how could I possibly have any upset if I really knew it? Because you'd be saying that this upset applies to all of existence. My upset, the thing that happened to me, this self has just happened to all of existence, and so we should be upset about it. It's a problem. My spiritual understanding is that the root of a lot of our issues are in the belief that we're separate from the things that we see. Yeah.
Duality is the source of all um, difficulty in the world, because we're not separate. Yeah.
Well, connect it back to there are those two different worlds. It's the separation between existence and experience. Uh, and consciousness, what unconsciousness is the separation of your identity from who you think you are to who you really are. And therein lies all of our suffering and pain. So, the answer to your question, but let's keep it real, the answer to your question is, would I ever experience an upset? And the answer is no. However, simultaneously, in the world of the triangle of mind, body, motion versus the world of the square, it's the triangle plus spirituality, or you could say consciousness. We experience sadness, we experience grief, and these are very important aspects to learn to master because everyday life in the horizontal. I said something today. Terry and I were going to a meeting, and I think I was expressing some frustration about something. And she said, Hayden, everything changes. and everything does. And one day I will not be here. One day Terry will not be here. Everything is on its way out the door. So the question goes back again, what is the purpose of the existence itself? Which is far more than what we've been taught and far more than what we know.
Well, and the mind is predicated on surviving, even though we know we're not going to. You were sharing that you knew at 10 years old, like, hey, why is nobody talking about this?
That's true.
Nobody makes it out of here alive, you know.
Shouldn't we be concerned? It
we
feels
got a real
urgent.
we got a
Yeah, it
real
just
kick
feels
out of
urgent.
that. Yeah, that was great. Hey, has anybody noticed that everything dies?
But that's the mind. But at existence, it's wow. What's the evolutionary process that's happening? This 80 years or however long a person lives is just such a tiny speck, you know, in the big picture. And if we can start to see things in a more circular way, not only our daily life, like, all right, what is this leading to? How did I participate in this even happening? And we might think it was done to us, like you said earlier, but if we, and one of our teachers shared that with us, Hayden and I were frustrated about something that was going on at work. And Robert just sat there and just very relaxed. He said, well, what did you do to make her treat you that way? And he wasn't being, you know, cryptic or sarcastic. It was a genuine question. And if we approach things like that, what was my part in this? Sometimes, of course, things happen, you know, and I'm not going to say everything. It's not like blaming people for things that happen in their lives, but there, in our everyday life, there are plenty of opportunities for us to look at and say, what was my part in this?
I had recently coached my daughter we're talking about relationships, and I said I think the strongest indicator of a relationship that is going to be positive and that could last and be functional and healthy and loving over the course of time is that exact very thing, is how does that person take ownership of their part in when it's tense, when it's tough. I mean, it doesn't have to be right in the moment, but do they come back and come and say, you know what, I thought about it, and what I said to you, yeah, that was me. That was my story
Yeah,
about you that was incorrect, and it came out sideways, and I apologize, and please forgive me for that. Like that, a person
I
that
have,
can do that has potential.
They actually have power.
but it's enclosed. That's here's a. I want to go back to that trilogy because it does provide a really good framework for understanding this conversation. But let me give you a really good image of what we are speaking about. And in the image is this: if you go to, for example, the Big Bang Theory, and all of a sudden the universe is created, and all over the universe, what we begin to see, what we can see in our galaxy now, is that there is a center. And out of that center emerges a plane. In the work that we do in consciousness, we frequently state that if it's true about the universe, it's true about you. And it is, because those sources are, we're not separate from that. So notice that when the infinite, whether you call it God, the divine, the transcendent, a million different words that have been used through time to describe that, when it comes into being, when the infinite is now enclosed in the finite, or you could say in the triangle, in other words, in your physical body, once you take birth, the center is born. And out of that center emerges your everyday life, or other words, the plane. Now, the plane can't exist without the center, and the center has no need to exist without a plane. But when the center is off kilter, when the center is has taken on, has adopted abnormal behaviors, concepts, irrational beliefs, emotional defense patterns, I could go on forever and ever, then that plane is going to be disturbed. in some way.
Off
Now,
kilter.
it's worse than off kilter, and we've all experienced that. So once that happens, of course, in most cases, the individual will seek relief through trying to resolve the plane. We got to figure out how to get this plane to stop getting upset all the time and get my everyday life to calm down. But see, it can't calm down until the center is addressed. And that is the invisible world, that is the non physical spiritual world, the other dimension that is really driving and creating the outcomes in our life.
I think it's why so many people
Was that
experience.
okay? Did I
Yes,
say
it
that
made me
okay?
think of the feeling of inertia that so many people experience, or the feeling of being stuck. I had this image come up last week when I was writing something about a carousel. You can be on the prettiest horse on the whole merry-go-round, but it's not going anywhere. It's going up and down and around in circles. But
Mm,
You
it's
drive that Porsche round and round and round.
it's this feeling of inertia because we're trying to break through, or we're trying to heal, or we're trying to expand through our physical life, through our mind, body, emotions, without accessing the spiritual or the invisible or the higher self. And that's why we just keep like a dog chasing its tail, feeling this sense of stuckness or of inertia. And that's where consciousness really can break open, can the carousel horse can get off of the circling tracks, and go out in the
mm.
countryside, because we're not bound anymore by that linear, physical, temporary dynamic of mind, body, and emotions, because that's what, experience is not wellness. The other spiritual can't be anything but well.
When we have thoughts, the way I experience consciousness, or the way I understand it is thoughts seem to pop like popcorn into the mind. And if you ask somebody, can you control your own thoughts? A lot of people say, yeah, I think I can, because look, I can walk over the room there. I'm going to plan to do that. And I would say to you, how did you construct that thought though? Did you do it, or did it pop and happen to you? And I'm not sure how this dynamic works, but I've been curious, and we talked about it during lunch, is where do these thoughts come from? And can we influence the kinds and qualities of thoughts that we have? In my experiences, the only thing I can think about it is when I put myself around, let's say, people that love me, or a place that brings awe, like the Grand Canyon, um, the kinds of thoughts that pop. Well, again, I don't feel like I'm in control, but the quality and kinds are different than if I were finding myself in a less desirable context. Does that make any sense? What do you think of that?
Yes, you've just got one more step to take.
Perfect. Let us bring it
Okay.
on.
Okay. Notice that you can examine the thought ad nauseum. You'll never find what you're looking for. Neither will you find the source of it, because it really does have a lot to do with the chemical brain, which, um, but I'm not going to spend any time there. Now, you said something, the way that I say this, I hope I don't come across in a negative way. If 10 people tell me that they meditate, what my experience has taught me is that 8 of them are lying. And the reason why is because it is so difficult. It is so hard to gain and earn what I refer to as meditation strength. That is the ability to sit down and calm the mind and begin to govern those thoughts, not through engaging in them or examining them, but by looking at it through the other world. Now, this is, for example, to me, consciousness is the clarifier of the cloudy mind. And there's a phrase that I used a long time ago. I refer to it as feeding the lions. It's like, waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning. It happened to me this morning at 4 o'clock, and where you wake up and you're bombarded with it can come out of nowhere, a thought of fear, a thought of worry, a thought of regret, a thought of
Panic.
self-condemnation, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And very few people will develop a system over the course of their life to address those lions that are feeding on you because of, and I don't mean you, I mean all of us,
Mhm.
our inability to be able to control that. So, 4 o'clock this morning, it happened to me, and I tried to take my own advice, and I went in and did my meditation thing, and then I was fine. I was okay. But what I'm saying is this: that's not the thought stuff is not the issue. The issue is the lack of realization.
Mm.
That's what causes our pain and suffering. And that takes us back to our existence. That takes us back to that which is ingrained in us at birth, a secret reality, literally, of who and what we really are, of what we're doing here, of why we're here, that we are not in touch with. But that's the evolutionary process. So if I put that trilogy in right now, it's very simple. Consciousness is the truth of who and what you are that's working its way out, and it is working its way out through your ignorance. Evolution is the movement of that consciousness from ignorance to truth. And spiritual realization is the mechanism by which it accelerates that process.
Okay, so I used to read a man by the name of David Hawkins. He wrote a couple books. I think it was Power versus Force and The Eye of the Eye, and there were some other things. And this guy was a self-proclaimed awakened man out, and I think he was from Sedona. He's no
Uh-huh.
longer with us, but one of his greatest contributions is he created this scale of consciousness, and he used muscle testing and some other things. And I know it's definitely in the woo woo category, which is fine. I think we should go there because we can. Um, it is that, on the scale of 1 to 1,000, one being, I don't know, consciousness at the level of a bacteria, and 1,000, say, Jesus Christ or the Buddha, the avatars. He also said in one of his books that humanity's consciousness, despite what people might think, is increasing over the course of time. And he had this threshold of, I don't know, maybe 200 or something like that. And it was like, he called it the level of trust, where he felt that humanity was just crossing that threshold somewhere in the 80s, I think, where it just had become, as a global consciousness, could even be trusted. Before that, in general, it was a consciousness that could not be. uh, he said one other interesting thing, and then I'll turn it over to you, which is that the only time that he noted that there was ever a downturn in consciousness, it was never because of war, which you might think. He said that he believed that the media, and this might raise some eyebrows, but he said, it's not me, he said the media dropped consciousness maybe by 3 points or something like that, which on a scale of evolutionary time frame in humanity's consciousness would be a lot. It'd be a lot. But beyond that, it's increasing over the course of time. So I'm curious, with everything going on today, and I know that was long-winded, but I felt it was important to set the stage for that. With everything going on today, do you guys believe consciousness is increasing or decreasing, and why?
It's the very cause of the collapse. It's the very cause of the accelerated
Mm.
destruction that we are experiencing. Now, if you only see it from that one world, of course, then we should all be terrified. The lens through which the other is operating, what we are witness to is a new birth. The old is coming to an end. Now, I'm not one of those people that I don't know how long that's going to take. I do know it's not going to be immediate, but this upset is precisely the movement of consciousness from its older form, which is self awareness, to the next transition in humanity's growth, which is consciousness. The problem is it's this wonderful quote by Sri Aurobindo that I enjoy so much, and it's very simple when he says, "Few see what none yet understands. God shall grow up while the wise men talk and sleep. Man shall not know the hour until it's coming. Belief shall not be until the work is done." So we're all doing the work right now, but we don't understand why. We
Well, even
don't.
in our own individual lives, we've all had to experience something that we thought was catastrophic, unjust, you know, traumatic, and they are those things at times. Happens only to some years later we look back and say, well, actually, as a result of that, this was created, this bloomed, this was an opportunity I would not have had if that hadn't happened. So it's really kind of the same thing, that we can't see what's happening if we're only in the physical. But I do think the evolution of us, there is a waking up, and this isn't just Hayden's, in my opinion. This is lots of sources, including one of our colleagues and friends who's teaching at the conference with us. He's Ukrainian, and he said there's an awakening. People are waking up all over the world, and I think what we're waking up to is it's not about me, the individual, and you mentioned this before, Travis, exclusively. It's about us as a collective, and how can we move forward together? How can we collaborate more wisely and consciously? Because we do have self awareness, we do understand from experience what will work and what won't work, so we can move into this higher range of consciousness. And we love that book, Power versus Force, and the model. We have played with that and laid that over Ron Smotherman's model of integrity, and it's a really powerful lens through which to view individual, but also human development, of moving higher and higher to abundance and farther from this fear-based limitation.
Well, see, I'm not even going to go that far to say that, it's about figuring out how we, certainly the issue of unification and unity and equanimity in all people, regardless of who they are, what color they are, etc. And it's hard to believe we're still having to talk about this in
Yeah,
2025, but but
agreed.
it has to come up in the conversation. I don't even go so far as to highlight that. Until the individual changes, the world can't change.
Mhm.
And so the singular focus that I have, at least, I love talking about the other stuff, but when it comes down to working, with folks and in these processes, it is about individual transformation. That's all you have to do. Then the plane stabilizes. Then the center builds its true strength. The only true strength in this world is inner strength, because everything else will fail you. And you don't have to be my age to know that.
Mhm.
Everybody's experienced that.
Mhm.
The relationship that you thought, was going to last forever, it didn't. The car that spent your life savings on, the cat urinates in it 2 days after you buy it. You can't get the smell out. Such is the path of the everyday horizontal physical life. It is only through the other that that daily horizontal physical life stabilizes.
Well,
So the question is how to do that.
let me ask you then, as a way to put this into practice. I am a big follower of Gary Zukov, and he talks about spiritual relationships. And I've actually done a lot of work around this in my past relationships. My ex-wife is my best friend, and we have a spiritual relationship, and it's based on seeing each other in the best possible, most loving way, because we know, who the other is. We're not just the ex, which is such a horrible,
Right.
there's got to be a better name for it than that, but that's all we have, right? So we call each other spiritual partners. How does your work, for you two, you and Terry, I'm curious how it shows up for you. How do you implement? I know I'm putting you guys on the spot here. We didn't talk about this, but I'm just curious how you use your own work in your personal relationship with each other, if you don't mind me asking.
No, it's actually been a really important part of our work, and we've worked together my whole adult life, but we've had our business together for 30 years. And one of the interesting things, Travis, is people that will be in workshops with us, and I hope this isn't too personal to share, but oftentimes they'll say, I'm not sure I know what this was about, or I'm working on this part of the content, but what I know I got out of it is that it's possible to have a relationship with a partner that is based on love and mutual respect.
Mm,
And I think that is I've often said I'm the luckiest person in the world. I always have been. But because I live with Hayden and I get to work with him at this level, it definitely it has made our relationship, and maybe it's vice versa. The relationship makes the work better, but the work makes the relationship better because it's like you said, to see one another not through the lens of wife or husband, but as collaborators on this journey together.
mm,
Well, um, this happened to me when I was really young. I met my first teacher when I was 27 years old. I mean, the timing just couldn't have been better. And I would work with him for 10 years. And one of the things that came out of that was I was in a bad marriage at the time. Terry and I were not together. And I'll never forget what he said to me. One time we were talking, he said, "Are you in a relationship?" I said, "Yes." He said, "No, you're not." I said, "What do you mean?" I said, "I'm married." He said, "I didn't ask you if you were married. I asked you, are you in a relationship?" And so it finally came down to this. And he looked at me and said, "The way you know that you're in a real relationship is that you have the option not to be in it."
mm,
And it froze me. I had no understanding at that time of what he was talking about. Now, you fast forward, like I've said this to Terry many times. I mean it. I hope that I never have to experience it. But I've said it many, many times, which is I've said to Terry, if you ever fall in love with somebody else, I'll help you because I love watching you be happy.
mm.
And I'll never forget the first time I said that to her, and she looked me dead in the eye and she said, "Do I get the boat?" I said, "Hell no, you don't get the boat. You don't get my stuff.
Oh,
You
wow.
can be with who you want to be with, but you're not
Yeah.
hauling the boat off."
Yeah.
And I mean that of creating a place inside of yourself that is it's never you're never always there. And anybody who knows Terry and I, and this is absolutely true, anybody who knows us knows that she is more emotionally stable than I am because I like this kind of edge in me, this little bit that is constantly trying to expand the boundaries, and it can get aggravated from time to time. But that's Terry, and that's my path. And what we would learn together is it's not about needing anything from anybody. Anybody who's ever been in a relationship, particularly a failed one, can look back and be absolutely 100% aware that expectations ruin relationships.
Mhm, mhm,
That's what they do. So if we
mhm.
can move out of expectation, where do we move to? We move towards the wholeness and completion of our own being that we are sharing with that other person
And that's the whole point of a relationship, is to share your whole and complete self with another person and enjoy their whole and complete self, even
without
while
needing
we have
anything from the
imperfections
other
within
person.
us. Yeah. Um, I think what you said too is so important to people. And you talked about losing a child, but it's losing anybody that we love. To be in a relationship, of course, every relationship ends, whether it is through divorce or death or separation of some kind. And to be able to be in that relationship in the wholeness of it, knowing that in this, human life, that it will end at some point, but not needing um, anything other than the time that you have with them. And I think that's a big challenge that we deal with, where we move into such fear of losing that we're not really engaged
Well, let's
in being in living and loving and enjoying the space that we're in right then, whether it's the Grand Canyon or whether it's your own, backyard. But
connect what you said to what we've discussed. In a relationship, if you don't think you're getting your needs met, I promise you, you will seek the fulfillment of those needs somewhere else, whether it is through not being home, whether it's through another relationship, a million different things. But where did that feeling come from? It's unconsciousness at work. It's not consciousness. And whatever it is you feel that you're missing on the inside, I promise you, you're going to try to find it on the outside. And here comes the suffering.
I had a conversation with my current partner. Jill and I have been together almost 8 years, and we had noticed just as of late, we can get to kind of bickering a little bit sometimes, where one person will say something and it's in a bit of a tone that's maybe not ideal, and the other person will sort of respond in a kind of a similar tone, and it can become where we're expressing this, like you said, we're basically unconscious there when we're doing that. And we have our weekly relationship meetings, and this last one we came up, and I decided that for me, I said, you know what, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to, in the mornings, I'm going to set my intention for the day that I see you newly. I see you just, I said, because, think about, if when I first met her, would I talk to her in the same way I'm talking to her now when I first met her? Or if I just met somebody new, would I talk to them the way I'm talking to her now? The answer is no. So what's different? And it's unconsciousness. I have slipped into an unconscious state and I don't want to be there. And so I'm determined to see her new each day. And that's my week. And then, she's my accountability partner. So we'll see. we'll see next. We'll see how I got my work cut out for me, but she's going to be grading me. I'm sure of it.
Well, we all
But
do.
that's such a powerful question of what happened. And there's a lot out there today about when did Americans become so mean, or why are people so ready to say hateful things, whether it's online or on a sign or, in
Mhm.
any kind of medium. And it's unconsciousness, because if we were conscious, we would know that what happens to you happens to me. That the energy I put out there, I'm absolutely boomeranging it back to myself. If we really got that, would we say another, even think another? And the Course of Miracles says every thought engenders either peace or
Fear.
war. Every
Mhm.
thought creates love or hate. Every thought, as you're talking about starting your day out, setting your intention and being
Much less actually saying it,
right.
you
Yeah.
know.
And that floored me when I read that. That one has stuck with me. A lot of things. You asked about our background. Like all uh, people, we find ourselves in this place of wanting to teach because we've been the beneficiary of such amazing teachers.
Mm. I'm a former course student. I'm not actively practicing, but I'm very well aware of black and white. I don't, maybe that's the wrong word, but it's very clear on what the problem is. It's very clear.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
don't have so many people don't have relationships with themselves. So how can you have relationships with other people that are not based on needing anything from them for any reason, to be okay? I mean, it's a very different way of looking at things, and yet relationships is where it's where we get to find out, who and what we are. And
I
and
think one of the challenges people face is that we hear things like, "Well, you deserve respect," or "You should heal out loud," or and there's no consciousness in that. That's just letting mind, body, and emotions take the reins and run off the rails with you. Because if I really am conscious, I'm going to see that, like Hayden said before, every time I'm upset is because I'm afraid there's something wrong with me, and that I can resolve. You cannot resolve it for me. And
yeah, well, go back to Travis. Go back to what you said about your weekly relationship meeting. How do we maintain the passion and that intensity of love that we experienced in the beginning? How do we maintain that over 30 years? Because when I was young in my first relationship, I did not know how to do that. And now, and I say this all the time, every day I fall more in love with Terry. We can't wait to see one another. I mean, we're almost glued to one another here at the office, and even that's not enough. You know, how can that be created? How can people find that sanctuary in relationship? It means we're going to have to know something more than what we grew up with, what our mind tells us it is about. It has to go beyond the horizontal physical and into the spiritual invisible.
Mhm.
And then the relationship can blossom and turn into, uh, uh, beyond what you thought was possible.
It's basically moving beyond the transactional nature that we have
Right.
given our relationships, and that
Right.
I will love you if, and we don't think we're doing that initially, but we find out later we've been doing that all along. And when you say expectation is the great relationship killer, it is absolutely correct. Uh, let's move on now to. I want to talk about Truth Spring, just
Okay.
as an entity. What is Truth Spring? I know when anybody hears me mention, I say Wellspring, and that's sort of, oh, obviously what you are, but Truth Spring comes from that. And I want to just give you a space to elaborate. What is Truth Spring, and how do you see
It
it
was
function?
it was a progression. We started MindSpring in 1995. Our work was based on leadership development, individual coaching, team development. Uh, but as the work continued to expand and were looking at this issue of wellness, then we created Wellspring Wellness Center. And here come all these other people, who are involved here on campus with their expertise and the things they do. And about 15 years ago, I won't go into all of it, but there was something that happened. And I came home and I told Terry, I said, something just happened. And I knew that it was a game changer. I knew that my whole life had just changed. And it had to do with consciousness and how the person that I met who was going to be the conduit to teach me about this and where is the source of understanding this thing called the truth of who and what I am. Where is that? Where do I find that? There have been a million different books written about it, and yet the world has not changed. So that was the beginning of it. And then we spent the last, I would say, 13, 14 years really being just dedicated to putting this together.
and trying to
Um,
come up, or not come up with, to organize a language that people can understand, because existence is invisible, and it goes on and on and on. That yes, this life, it depends on what people believe, this life ends, but that doesn't mean that that invisible part of you ends. So what is that? What is the purpose of that? If it comes here for this period of time and then it moves somewhere else, what is it here for? Why are we here? What is the intent of coming into a physical body and dealing with loss, whether it's, obviously a loved one when we lose a loved one, or as Hayden said, a job or relationship, that,
Or a
and we
child.
deal with self-doubt, or we deal with setbacks and disappointments. Why in the world would we do that? If we were of the divine, why would we come in? And one of the most fascinating answers that does jibe with how I was brought up as far as background, but the teachers that we've had and the work we've done over the last 15 years has brought this into much clearer focus, that we are here for more than just this blip on the screen. And the purpose is to be the divine manifest. It's not that I'm some sinner that's not worth, we have all kinds of images around that. It's the only way that the divine can experience itself is through you or through me or
See,
through any of our listeners. It's the invisible. It can't evolve. It can't experience itself except in a form, and I get to be that form at this time. And so, how I use this time is not, it's not frivolous, it's not insignificant. As you
there's a
said
reason.
before, we're not some insignificant little tiny speck in the universe in some moment in time, that there's a real meaning and purpose to it. And finding that is why we created TruthSpring. And it's been difficult because of the invisible nature of existence, and trying to
Consciousness.
create, yes, creating a language that people can understand. But that's why we have a conference, because we're so excited about it. And the
You see,
agenda is the
it's a
agenda is like, man, I just want to go be a student there.
it's amazing to me, and uh, and I have so many different words for it, but it is amazing to me that here we are in 2025, and with the collapse that is beginning, we are at a point where we can begin to discuss the journey of the soul and what the soul is doing here. Terry said something, and it reminded me. Sri Aurobindo referred to it as the mutual debt. The mutual debt is the debt that we owe for the privilege of being here, of being in a physical body, not to talk about love and how great sex is, but to experience love and the joy of sex and great Mexican food and whatever it is, the feel of the
Swimming
warm
with the
ocean water.
stingrays.
Yeah,
Ramen noodles. Don't forget those.
Spicy,
exactly.
spicy.
Hmm. We get to the restaurant. Travis was so focused. He's in that menu trying to order those ramen.
Spicy ramen, man. It's the same thing every time. They know me there.
Exactly. But how wonderful that is. Now here's the catch. And we're at a place now in the evolutionary process where these things can finally be discussed, because until they are, we cannot solve the issue of our existence. And as I said, we can begin to discuss this issue of the soul. It is only in the physical that the soul evolves.
Love that.
It
Eh,
does not evolve when it passes away. It consolidates. It goes through. It's depending on it
Synthesizes.
synthesizes it on based completely on the level of consciousness that that individual is practicing. It can spend. Well, I won't go into all of that, right? Terry slapped me on the hand. Don't bring that up. Don't talk about that. But it's only in
I
the
nudged
physical
you.
that it evolves. When it passes away, it consolidates, not just this lifetime, but all of its previous lifetimes. And then at a certain point in the process, it will choose to come back, and the process begins again. Sri Aurobindo referred to it as the mutual debt. We do, it's a debt for the privilege of being here. But it also has a debt towards us for our willingness to come here and go through this suffering and this pain of being an unconscious human being on its way to becoming conscious and mastering the process of life. So it's a debt
And in
to
that way,
us.
saving the world.
Yeah, and in that way, the world is saved. And in that process, as we have all experienced, even in our worst moments, it seems as though there's a helping hand. It's like And in that moment of need, it's like all of a sudden something we can see, maybe just for a second, that everything is going to be okay.
Mhm.
That I can do this. I can move through this. But it's so mathematical in so many ways. And one of the ways that I describe it is the outcome of your life. And now this is simplified, but the outcome of your life resides between two parameters: what you and your mind are capable of creating, and the second one is what you and your heart are capable of enduring.
Mm.
Show me how the individual's dealing with that. I do a pretty good job of drawing, what's getting
Well,
ready
it
to happen.
also
And that's the journey of the soul.
eliminates the experience so many people have of meaninglessness. I
Mhm.
mean, that's really all there is meaning, is what can I create? And in the midst of that creation, and its importance to me individually, but also to the collective, what am I able and willing to endure? And
Mm.
sometimes it's just patience, and sometimes it's loss and everything in between. But
But it's
it's sure not meaningless.
how to consciously, intentionally, deliberately move into the fear of meeting both those parameters. Because when you start operating consciously, it's not like it's going to be a cakewalk. Because now you may be absolutely terrified to take this next step, but that's what the soul is requiring to
Mm.
exceed its current understanding, just like when you experience loss.
And that's the
Except now you're doing it consciously. So why would you expect anything but good to happen?
Mhm.
And that's the way that works.
and that's the way that we have learned to view equanimity, which is difficult things and um, things that we love to experience are equal in what we can gain from them and how they move us forward in our evolution and our understanding. As long as, not as long as, but often what I try to do is just reject the difficult things and only stick to the,
Let's go to the Caribbean again.
yeah.
Let's go
I
get
love it.
another hot
We've got to give.
I love it. Well, you guys have a conference coming up September 11th through 14th. It's the Truth Spring Conference, and yeah, I know that you've got a. I've seen some of the posters up at your place of business, and you've got some really cool speakers and some really interesting things going on there. Who is this conference for? Who are the speakers, and what can they expect?
If I give a overview in order to answer those questions, we do have the keynote speaker, and we have another gentleman who's giving a keynote speech. But the conference is actually a true learning and teaching conference. I'm not even interested in what I have to say. I'm not interested in my opinion about current events, etc., because that's just more talk.
Mhm.
This is we have constructed a very keen curriculum around spiritual concepts and realizations that are guiding the content of each of the classes and programs. So, who is the conference for? And please jump
Yeah.
in if you want to supply an answer. It's for anybody who is truly interested in improving the quality and understanding of their life and coming to terms and grips with the purpose of their life and their existence and who and what they really are.
Some people, some people, myself and most people I know are saying, what can I do in the face of this collapse of everything around us, not just in our country, but globally? What can I do individually? And the answer really is it's to go within and develop my own a greater understanding of why I'm here and what is the purpose of all of this, because everything is either good or it's working toward the good. So who this conference is for is somebody who is interested in what's possible, because every time, whether it's a forest fire or a flood or a divorce or a lost job, anytime there's destruction, creation is right around the corner. Something new is going to come. That's just how everything works. And I challenge anybody to find a loophole in that, that there is something else coming. And what comes is dependent really on us as individuals and what we decide we want to build and create and foster and nurture. Now, our keynote speaker, Vikram Gandhi, is a documentary filmmaker. He's from New York, New Jersey, but I think he lives in LA now. And he did a documentary about 10 years ago, 12 years ago, called Kumare, in which he's of East Indian descent, but he was born in New Jersey. And he pretended to be a guru from India and grew his hair out and became very skilled at yoga and actually has had a following. And that was the documentary that people will follow those who they think have the answer. And his message was, you don't need an answer from someone else. You need to go inside and find your own, and connect to that part of you that does have the strength and the connection to um, the divine that we've lost touch with. So I don't know if I said that exactly how Vikram would say it, but that's why we asked him to come be a speaker, and he graciously accepted. He came to Asheville to hang out for a weekend with us and the other teachers. Like I said, one of whom is originally from Ukraine and lives here or in Greenville now, and another who was in corporate America, has her MBA in business and finance from Harvard, and she's not speaking along those lines. She's definitely speaking around consciousness, but they have varied backgrounds. Um,
I've had, I,
and we do have the body included. We have meditation, yoga, tai chi in the mornings,
yeah,
but all the whole days, the 3 days are arranged around to first get information, then learn how to engage with it, and then at a dynamic level apply it in your life, so that the takeaway will be, I can do these things that will create change and improvement and expansion in my life.
the online project, the learning project itself, which we're in the third year of now, is called the becomingyoujourney.com. And that's where we've put so much of our effort in this. But to be clear, what we believe is that consciousness is a result of realization. So the conference is based on that concept that growth can be accelerated and achieved through spiritual realization, which is what all the classes are about. Did I
Yeah, it's going to be a
describe
lot
that?
of fun too. We have some cool and interactive, engaging things. So it's not sitting around listening to people talk.
No,
Hey, it's
no.
about community. I'm sure you're going to meet people. You're going to find others that are struggling in the same way that you might be, and coming up with solutions together and learning. And I love conferences. I think these are the most expansive opportunities for growth that you can do. These kinds of weekend events and retreats are my absolute favorite. But I like the shorter ones because you can do it if you're local. You can go, you can do it, and learn a lot and connect and it's just awesome. I wanted to just also let people know too, if you are interested in learning more about Wellspring, you can go to wellspringasheville.com and truthspringasheville.com, both of those websites. And then, of course, what was just mentioned with becomingyoujourney.com. Uh, I've been blown away, and I feel like we could definitely. I think we're gonna have to have another session, you guys. We're just getting into the we've hit the tip of the iceberg. People don't realize it's just the
Yeah,
tip so far. But do you think maybe down the road we do another?
We would love it.
I'd
Thank
love
you
to.
so much. We get a little carried away because this is such an important topic, not only in our own lives, but of course something we want to share with other people. So we really appreciate the opportunity, Travis, to be with you, number one, and to be with your listeners, of course, as
I'll
well.
share one last thing, and so
Mhm.
because I love to implicate and create a stage for growth, and I'll say this for anybody who is listening to this. I promise you, I give you my word that what I'm getting ready to say is true. You're not going to believe it. Your mind is going to go, that guy's crazy. He doesn't know what he's talking about. But I'm going to tell you something that is true. And in one day, in one lifetime, you will realize it. There's nothing wrong with you. There
Mhm.
never was. until you made up a story as part of how your soul engages in the evolutionary process. But your story doesn't make it real. It's only your story. And the truth of who you are is sitting right there waiting for you to see it. There's
Mm.
nothing wrong with
Wonderful. And I love our story time together. This has been amazing, and I can't think of a better way to end it. I got nothing to say. I can't top that. So we're just going to call it good here, guys. I really
you.
appreciate. Thank you so much for joining.
You're welcome. Thank
Appreciate you.
you.
Thanks, Travis.
Thanks, Travis.
Take
Bye-bye.
Thanks so
care.
much. Bye
Bye.
bye.
To experience the heart-centered offerings of Wellspring Wellness Center, from transformative workshops to sacred community gatherings, visit wellspringasheville.com. And don't miss the upcoming Truth Spring Conference happening September 11th through the 14th at truthspringasheville.com, where Haydn and Terry will be holding space for deep spiritual exploration. Whether you're already walking a spiritual path or just beginning to awaken, this event offers an opportunity to connect, learn, and grow in conscious community. Thank you for listening. To learn more about Be Well Asheville, visit bewellavl.com. And don't forget to follow this podcast. You can catch the next episode and bring us along on your hike on the Mountains to Sea Trail, on your drive through the Parkway, or on your way downtown to Friday's Drum Circle. If you loved what you heard, please rate and review the show. Your review helps others discover and grow our wellness community. You can also check out Asheville Wellness news, events, and our newsletter at bewellavl.com. Thank you for being the best part of our wellness community. Until next time, be well.